If you're over 60 and spending hours organizing items you'll never use again, you're making decluttering 10 times harder than it needs to be. I'm about to show you the 7 biggest time wasters that are keeping you trapped in clutter, and why millions of seniors fall into these exact same traps. The third mistake on this list actually makes your home more cluttered, not less. And that final tip? It's going to completely change how you think about letting go of your belongings forever. But first, let me ask you this. Have you ever spent an entire weekend decluttering only to feel like nothing really changed? Welcome back to the Senior Reset, where we help you create the life you deserve after 60. I'm here today because I've helped thousands of seniors transform their homes, and I keep seeing the same mistakes over and over again. These aren't just small errors. They're massive time wasters that can turn a simple decluttering session into months of frustration. Today, I'm revealing the 7 most useless tasks that seniors waste time on during every declutter. I'll show you exactly why these tasks keep you stuck, what to do instead, and how to cut your decluttering time in half while getting better results. Plus, I'm saving the most surprising tip for last. It's the one thing that every professional organizer knows, but most people never hear about. But before we dive in, do me a favor. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by decluttering or wondered why it takes so long, hit that like button right now. Your engagement helps other seniors find this life-changing information, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. The first useless task that's stealing your time and energy? Organizing items before you decide what to keep? I see this everywhere. Seniors spending hours arranging books by size, folding clothes that haven't been worn in years, and creating perfect little piles of items they're not even sure they want. Here's what happened to my client, Maria. She called me after spending 3 months trying to declutter her craft room. When I arrived, I found perfectly organized bins of fabric scraps, sorted by color and size, boxes of buttons arranged from smallest to largest, ribbons wound into neat little coils. The problem? She hadn't crafted in over 5 years and had no plans to start again. Maria had fallen into the organization trap. She was spending 90% of her time organizing and only 10% deciding what actually deserved space in her life. This is backwards thinking that keeps you busy, but never makes real progress. Why does this happen to so many seniors? After decades of being responsible for organizing households, offices and family schedules, our brains automatically go into organize mode when we see clutter. It feels productive. It feels like progress. But it's actually the biggest time waster in decluttering. Think about it logically. Why would you spend time organizing items you might donate or throw away? It's like washing dishes before putting them in the dishwasher. Every minute you spend organizing items you haven't committed to keeping is a minute stolen from actual progress. Here's the reality check. If you haven't used something in 2 years, organizing it beautifully doesn't make it more useful. It just makes it prettier clutter. The solution is simple but requires discipline. Before you touch a single item to organize it, ask yourself, do I love this? Do I use this? Does this fit my life today? Only items that get a clear yes deserve your organizational energy. Professional organizers call this the decision-first rule, and it can cut your decluttering time by 70%. Instead of spending 6 hours organizing a closet, you spend 2 hours making decisions and 30 minutes organizing what stays. Have you ever caught yourself organizing things you're not sure you want to keep? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one and often feature your stories in future videos. The second useless task that's sabotaging your progress. Spending hours researching the perfect donation home for every single item. I've watched seniors spend more time finding homes for their unwanted belongings than they spent acquiring them in the first place. Let me tell you about James, a 68-year-old retired teacher who contacted me after his decluttering project stretched into its 8th month. His garage was packed with boxes labelled research donation options. He had old textbooks that he was convinced needed to go to exactly the right school. Kitchen gadgets that he felt should go to someone who would really appreciate vintage appliances. Even broken electronics that he was sure someone handy could fix and use. James was trapped in what I call donation perfection paralysis. He'd turned letting go into a full-time research project. Meanwhile, his wife couldn't park in the garage, and their home remained cluttered because nothing was actually leaving. Here's the truth about donation perfectionism. It's not really about helping others. It's about avoiding the guilt of letting go. When we create elaborate research projects around donating, we're unconsciously trying to make ourselves feel better about items we should have released long ago. But here's what happens in reality. Most donation centers are equipped to sort items and get them to appropriate recipients. That vintage kitchen gadget you spend 3 hours researching. The donation center staff can identify and price it in 30 seconds. Those textbooks? They have established relationships with schools and programs that need them. Your job isn't to be a donation coordinator, it's to be a decision maker about your own space and life. The research rabbit hole is particularly dangerous for seniors because we often have more time than we did in our working years. That extra time can easily get consumed by good intentions that actually prevent progress. I've seen people spend 6 months researching donation options whilst living in cluttered, stressful environments. Think about what that stress is costing you compared to the marginal benefit of finding the perfect home for items you no longer want. Here's your new rule. Choose 3 reliable donation centers in your area, a general charity like Goodwill, a specialized group like Habitat for Humanity, Restore for household items, and one local organization. That's it. Everything goes to one of these 3 places based on basic category, not extensive research. If an item is truly valuable, we're talking worth over £200, then yes, do some research or consider selling it. But for everything else, the goal is removal, not optimization. The freedom you'll feel when you stop researching and start releasing is incredible. Instead of managing a complex donation strategy, you'll be living in a cleaner, calmer space. The third useless task, and this one might surprise you, is creating elaborate, just-in-case storage systems. This actually makes your home more cluttered, not less, because you're not decluttering, you're just reorganizing your fear of the future. I walked into Sarah's basement and found what looked like a small department store. Shelves lined the walls, each labeled with precision. Gift wrap, Christmas, gift wrap, birthdays, candles, emergencies, linens, guest bedrooms, books, maybe read again, clothes, if I lose weight, decorations, seasonal storage. Sarah had spent 2 years and over £500 on storage solutions to organize items she was keeping just in case. But here's what she discovered when we did the maths together. She hadn't accessed 80% of these stored items in 3 years. She was paying to store things she didn't actually need. The just-in-case mentality is particularly challenging for seniors because many of us lived through times when resources were scarce. We learned to save everything because replacement might be difficult or expensive. But we're living in different times now, with different resources and different needs. Let's be honest about just-in-case scenarios. How often do they actually happen? And when they do, how often is the item you saved actually useful or still in good condition? That emergency candle you saved might have melted in storage. Those maybe read again books might no longer interest you. The if I lose weight clothes might be outdated even if you reach your goal. Here's the hidden cost of just-in-case storage. It's not just taking up physical space, it's taking up mental space. Every stored item represents a decision you postponed. Your brain is still tracking and managing all these maybe items, creating a low-level stress that affects your daily peace of mind. Professional organizers have a rule. If you haven't needed it in 2 years, you won't need it in the next 2 years. There are exceptions. Important documents, sentimental items with real meaning, seasonal items you actually use. But most just-in-case items are just anxiety wearing a storage label. The transformation happens when you shift from, what if I need this someday, to, how is keeping this improving my life today? Today is the life you're actually living. Today is what matters. Start with one just-in-case category and challenge yourself. Those extra sets of sheets for beds you no longer have? The backup kitchen gadgets for meals you no longer cook? The books you might read again someday? Choose freedom over fear. I guarantee you'll find that letting go of just-in-case items creates space for things that enhance your actual life, not your imaginary future emergencies. The fourth useless task that's keeping you stuck in a decluttering loop, going over the same areas again and again without ever making final decisions. I call this decluttering Groundhog Day, and it's exhausting millions of seniors. Picture this. Every few months you tackle that hallway closet, you pull everything out, look at it all, maybe move some things around, put most of it back, and tell yourself you'll deal with it properly next time. Months later, you're back at the same closet, having the same internal debates about the same items. This happened to my client David for 3 years running. Every spring and autumn, he'd spend a weekend in his home office, sorting through the same boxes of old work files, the same stack of magazines, the same collection of office supplies. He'd make small adjustments, but the fundamental clutter remained. He was decluttering without deciding. Why do we do this to ourselves? Often it's because we're hoping that if we look at items enough times, the decision of whether to keep them will become obvious. We think that familiarity will breed clarity, but the opposite happens. The more times we handle the same items without deciding, the more emotionally attached we become to them. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect. The more we see something, the more we tend to like it, even if it serves no purpose in our lives. Every time you touch that broken picture frame or flip through that outdated cookbook, you're actually making it harder to let go. Here's what professional declutterers know. Indecision is a decision. It's the decision to stay stuck. Every item you can't decide about is voting for the status quo, voting for continued clutter, voting for ongoing stress. The solution requires what I call decision courage. When you're decluttering an area, you get one chance per item. Pick it up, ask the essential questions. Do I love this? Do I use this? Does this fit my life today? And make a decision. Keep it or release it. No third option, no maybe pile, no I'll decide next time. If you truly can't decide about an item in that moment, it goes in what I call a decision box with today's date. If you don't retrieve anything from that box within 6 months, everything in it gets donated without opening it again. This approach feels scary at first because we're used to having infinite chances to reconsider. But here's what happens when you commit to one-time decisions. You stop wasting mental energy on items that don't matter, and you start living in spaces that actually serve your life. The relief that comes from finally clearing an area completely, not just shuffling things around, is incredible. You'll wonder why you spent years revisiting the same clutter when you could have been enjoying clean, functional spaces. Have you ever found yourself decluttering the same area over and over? What's the space in your home that keeps calling you back? Share in the comments. Your story might help someone else break their own decluttering loop. The fifth useless task that's costing you peace of mind. Holding on to items simply because they were expensive, regardless of whether they still serve your life. This is what I call sunk cost clutter, and it's one of the biggest emotional traps in decluttering after 60. Let me share Catherine's story. She had a formal dining room set that cost £8,000 20 years ago. Beautiful cherry wood, 8 chairs, matching china cabinet. The problem? Catherine hadn't hosted a formal dinner in over 5 years. She and her husband ate at the kitchen counter. The dining room had become a storage area for mail and laundry, but every time we talked about letting it go, Catherine would say, "But it costs so much money." She was paying emotional rent every day for furniture that no longer fit her lifestyle, simply because of what she'd paid decades ago. Here's the hard truth about expensive items we no longer use. The money is already spent. Whether you keep the item or donate it, that money is gone. But whilst you can't recover the money, you can recover something even more valuable: the space, the energy, and the peace of mind that clutter is costing you today. This is particularly challenging for seniors because many of us remember when certain items were significant purchases relative to our incomes. That china set might have represented months of saving. The exercise equipment might have been a major investment in your health goals. The craft supplies might have represented dreams of creative retirement. But holding on to expensive items you don't use isn't honoring the money you spent. It's throwing away the life you could be living today. Every day you navigate around unused, expensive items. Every time you feel guilty looking at them, you're paying a new price for an old purchase. I've seen people turn their homes into expensive storage units, keeping items that cost hundreds or thousands of pounds but haven't been used in years. Meanwhile, they're living in cramped, cluttered spaces and complaining about not having room for things they actually need. Here's how to break free from expensive item paralysis. Calculate the cost per use honestly. If you bought a treadmill for £2,000 and used it 50 times, that's £40 per use. If it's been sitting unused for 3 years, that cost is only going up, and the space it's occupying could be serving your current life. Consider this perspective shift. The most expensive item in your home is the one that costs you daily stress and functionality without providing any benefit. A £5,000 piano you never play is more expensive than a £50 item you use weekly. Sometimes the best way to honor an expensive purchase is to let it go to someone who will actually use and appreciate it. That formal dining set could be creating memories in a young family's home instead of collecting dust in yours. The freedom that comes from releasing expensive clutter is profound. You're not just clearing space, you're choosing your present life over past spending decisions. The sixth useless task that turns simple decluttering into a complex project management nightmare: creating too many sorting categories. I've walked into homes where seniors have created 20 different piles and boxes, turning their living room into what looks like a logistics warehouse. This happened with my client Nancy, a retired librarian who approached decluttering with the same detailed categorization she'd used in her professional life. When I arrived at her house, I found items sorted into categories like books, fiction, hardcover, books, fiction, paperback, books, non-fiction, self-help, books, non-fiction, cooking, books, non-fiction, gardening, and 12 more book categories. She had similar elaborate systems for every room. Nancy had been decluttering for 6 months, but her house looked more cluttered than when she started because she was drowning in sorting systems. She'd created a complex organizational project instead of making simple keep or release decisions. The problem with too many categories is that they create decision fatigue before you even start deciding what to keep. Instead of 2 simple choices, keep or donate, you're making multiple classification decisions for every single item. Your brain gets exhausted from categorizing before it even gets to the important question of whether you want these things in your life. Here's what professional organizers know. The goal of decluttering isn't perfect categorization, it's elimination of excess. You don't need to sort items perfectly if you're getting rid of them, and for items you're keeping, you'll organize them properly in their final homes anyway. The maximum number of categories you should ever use during decluttering is 5. Keep, donate, trash, sell, if you're committed to selling within 30 days, and relocate, items that belong in other rooms. That's it. Anything more complex slows down your progress and overwhelms your decision-making capacity. But here's what I see happen most often. People create elaborate sorting systems as a way to avoid making the hard decisions about what to actually keep. It's easier to spend time categorizing than to face the emotional work of letting go. Sorting feels productive, but it's often just sophisticated procrastination. I had one client who spent 3 weeks creating a detailed spreadsheet of her collectibles, complete with purchase dates, original prices, and current estimated values. When we finally sat down to make decisions, we donated 90% of them regardless of the spreadsheet data. All that categorization work was just a delay tactic. The transformation happens when you simplify your system to match your goal. If your goal is a cleaner, more functional home, then your sorting system should be as simple as possible. Complex categories are for people who want to become professional organizers, not for people who want to live more peacefully in their homes. Try this approach for your next decluttering session. Set up just 3 containers: keep, donate, trash. Touch each item once, make a decision, put it in the appropriate container. No subcategories, no detailed sorting, no complex systems. You'll be amazed how much faster you move when you're not trying to create the perfect organizational system for items you're planning to get rid of anyway. The 7th and most emotionally draining useless task: spending time and energy feeling guilty about past purchases instead of focusing on creating the life you want today. This guilt keeps millions of seniors trapped in homes full of items they no longer want or need. Let me tell you about Walter's breakthrough moment. He was holding a bread maker he'd bought 15 years ago, used 3 times and then stored in a cabinet. Instead of making a simple decision about whether to keep it, he spent 20 minutes telling me about how excited he'd been to buy it, how he'd researched different models, how he'd planned to make fresh bread every week. "I feel so stupid," he said. "I wasted all that money and I never followed through." Walter was stuck in a guilt spiral that had nothing to do with the bread maker and everything to do with punishing himself for past decisions. Here's what I told Walter, and what I want you to understand. You're not the same person who made those purchases. You had different energy levels, different interests, different hopes and dreams. The person who bought that bread maker, craft supplies, exercise equipment, or hobby materials was making decisions with the information and feelings they had at that time. Guilt about past purchases is particularly intense for seniors because we often have more items representing more decades of decisions. Every unused item can feel like evidence of poor judgment, wasted money, or unfulfilled intentions. But this perspective is not only unproductive, it's inaccurate. Those purchases weren't mistakes. They were expressions of who you were and who you hoped to become at different stages of your life. The craft supplies represented a time when you wanted to be more creative. The exercise equipment represented a time when you had specific health goals. The kitchen gadgets represented a time when cooking felt exciting. The fact that your interests or abilities have changed doesn't make those past purchases wrong, it makes them complete. They serve their purpose in your life, even if that purpose was just giving you hope or excitement for a while. Here's the shift that changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why did I buy this?" start asking, "What does keeping this cost me today?" Focus on the present reality, not past decisions. The money is spent, the purchase is made, and the only question that matters now is whether this item serves your current life. I've watched people live in cluttered homes for years, surrounded by guilt instead of surrounded by things they love and use. Every time they see those unused items, they're reinforcing negative self-talk about their judgment, their follow-through, their worthiness of the space they occupy. But here's what happens when you release the guilt along with the items. You create space not just in your home, but in your heart and mind. You stop punishing yourself for past decisions and start making present decisions that serve who you are today. The most powerful moment in decluttering often comes when someone realizes they can let go of both the item and the story they've been telling themselves about it. You are not defined by your unused purchases. You are defined by how you choose to live today. What items in your home are you holding onto because of guilt about buying them? It's time to forgive yourself and focus on creating the peaceful, functional space you deserve right now. Now imagine walking into your home after avoiding these 7 useless tasks. Instead of spending months organizing items you don't want, researching perfect donation homes, creating just-in-case storage systems, repeatedly decluttering the same areas, keeping expensive items you never use, sorting into endless categories and feeling guilty about past purchases, you focused on simple decisions and swift action. Your home feels lighter because you're not managing elaborate systems. Your mind feels clearer because you're not carrying the mental weight of indefinite decisions. Your time is your own because you're not trapped in endless decluttering cycles. This is what happens when you shift from being a clutter manager to being a decision maker. You stop maintaining problems and start creating solutions. The energy you were spending on these useless tasks is now available for living the life you actually want after 60. If this video helped you identify the useless tasks that have been sabotaging your decluttering efforts, smash that like button and share it with someone who's been struggling with clutter. Your engagement helps other seniors find these life-changing strategies. And here's what I want you to do right now. Pick just one of these 7 useless tasks that you recognize in your own decluttering approach. Commit to avoiding it in your next decluttering session. Then come back and tell me in the comments which task you chose and how it felt to skip it. Subscribe and hit the notification bell.